Hello, gang. In this chapter, we're going to talk about random access memory. We're going to talk about what RAM does, how it works, and how it relates to your system. We'll talk about some of the different types of RAM. There are lots of them, but a lot of them are older. We're going to talk about some of the operational characteristics, like specific types of memory you can get: ECC, EDO, registered, buffered, and unbuffered. We'll talk about how to install memory, and then some things that you can troubleshoot with memory. And finally, preventative maintenance. So RAM stands for Random Access Memory. And the reason is that the memory addresses are dynamically located, or random. It's different from ROM because in ROM there are pre-assigned addresses. So the RAM holds data for the CPU to process and data the CPU has processed. Almost everything in your computer, it uses RAM in some form. If you hit a key on the keyboard, it's stored in RAM until the CPU uses it. If you're reading something off the hard drive, it's stored in the RAM until the operating system is able to read it. If you're downloading stuff off the internet or looking at a web page, that's stored in RAM before it's displayed. It's faster than other storage, such as hard drives or USB memory. And one thing that I want to make sure you're aware of about RAM or memory is that if your system is slow, this is usually one of the easiest ways you can improve performance is by adding RAM. Now, in the old days, computers didn't come with a lot of it because it was really expensive, but now RAM is extremely affordable. And the amount of speed that you'll get out of adding RAM to a machine up to a point is pretty remarkable. So things you need to know when you're going to buy memory are the number of pins, so you can tell the type, and the number of RAM slots you have in your computer. Um, you'll also need to know what type of memory you have. Are you running RDRAM, SDRAM, DDR? If you're looking at an older machine, maybe you're running SODIMMs on a laptop. You need to make sure that it matches the speed of the front side bus or the speed of the memory that you have. And memory is measured in nanoseconds for throughput. You can get some options. Memory is somewhat like a car. You can buy something that works, or you can buy the Cadillac. Error checking is one of those things where the memory checks itself to make sure everything is proper, but it's more expensive. And then finally, whether your computer needs dual or triple channel. If your motherboard will only run in dual or triple channel, you've got to buy memory in 2s or 3s that match up in order to be able to use it in your machine. One other thing I want to point out here, if you don't know what's in your computer before you buy memory, pop the case open and look. The number of slots that you have available is important because let's say your computer has 4 gigs of memory. It's very possible that it has 4 1 gig chips. And if you only have 4 slots and you want to upgrade, then you're going to have to replace all your memory instead of being able to add to it. So there's some different types of RAM. SRAM is one type, and that is the cache memory in the computer. It doesn't require a refresh, and it's very expensive, but it's very fast. Generally, the cache that's on your motherboard and processor is not upgradable. Other types are SDRAM and then DDR and DDR2. And finally, an older type is RAM bus. Now, we stop at DDR2 here, but there are other types that are out now, DDR3, DDR4, and some video cards even use DDR5. Memory is one of those areas that changes constantly, and you need to kind of be aware of that, though most of the questions on the test should just relate to older types of memory. Do be aware that there's a lot of new, faster memory. And that's going to be a thing that continues as we keep making computers faster and faster. So here's just some examples of some different types of memory. We've got DDR and DDR2 at the top. SDRAM, a SIM, that's an old one. SIPP, that's a very old one. And then a very old type on here, this 30-pin SIM at the bottom. I want to point out something with DDR and DDR2 uh, that I think you need to be aware of, and they change this every time. It's in a different place with DDR3 and DDR4 and 5. This little notch that's cut out, if you'll notice, it's not quite in the center. And the reason for that is so that it makes sure you're only able to plug the memory in one way. If you look at DDR and DDR2 here, you'll notice the notch is not in exactly the same place either. Even if you turn that around, it won't be in the same place. So that keeps you from plugging memory in that won't work. The general rule in computing now, and again, it's a general rule, but with memory is that if it plugs into the machine, it's going to work in the machine. So SDRAM stands for Synchronous Dynamic Random Access Memory, and this was in PCs before 2000. It's an old type of memory. That's been replaced with DDR and DDR2. DDR is double data rate. PC 2700 means it runs at 2700 megabits. DDR2 is twice the speed of DDR. 3, 4, and 5 are all significantly faster than this. And then Rambus is a type you'll be aware of as well, but it's not really in use anymore. This is a good little table to just give you some examples of characteristics of memory. And this is also one of those things that anytime you need, you'll be able to look up on the internet. But for purposes of the A+ exam, you really kind of need to memorize the types of memory and the pins. They may give you a question on the test such as this is a 240 pin type of memory that can run in dual or triple channel mode. And from that, them telling you 240 pins, they're going to expect you to realize, oh, that's DDR2. So memory is classified in different ways. The amount of memory on each module, the differences in parity and non-parity, ECC and non-ECC, and then registered and unbuffered or unregistered, and single and double-sided. And we'll kind of talk about each of those. So single inline memory modules, or SIMs, just have memory on one side. SIMs became DIMMs because DIMMs have memory on both sides. Now it's important as we talk about the history of memory here to remember that everything in a computer, including memory, has gotten smaller and smaller. SIMs were relatively large because the memory chips were large and they generated a lot of heat, so they could only put them on one side because of issues like that. DIMMs came around because they realized how to make it a little smaller and put more memory on a chip. And then as DDR came out, we can get even more memory on single chips. So something to be aware of is that memory is measured not really even in megabytes anymore, but generally in gigabytes. 8 bits are a byte, and each memory module is referred to as a bank. They're usually numbered 0 to whatever. If you have 3, they're 0 to 3. If you've got 6, they may be 0 to 5. Slots must be compatible. It must fit if it's going to work. And then multiple banks quite often require matched pairs of memory. And I hate that they put require in there because a lot of new motherboards don't require it, but they'll run faster if you do match them. So parity and non-parity deals with error checking of memory. And what happens is that just like when data is sent over a network, the memory runs a CRC check on itself to see if there is an error in what's been written. And that is a way to ensure that data hasn't been tampered with in any way, that it is exactly as it was in the memory when it's written. You do get a small performance decrease because the memory has to run this check on the parity, and it costs a lot more. Another type is ECC, and that not only finds memories, but it also corrects them. And ECC is pretty expensive. You really only see that on servers, and in my practical experience, mainly on database servers, where something like that's very important. So if you're going to put memory in a computer, be sure that you pay attention to electrostatic discharge. The memory is one of the parts of a machine that even just a light shock from static electricity can cause the memory to have problems. And what happens a lot of times is it doesn't completely damage the memory, it's just going to damage some of the addresses in it. So you may put the machine back together and it just have weird errors days later, and it all be tied back to memory. So again, from chapter one of the things you can do is just before you unplug the computer, touch the back of the power supply while it's plugged into a grounded outlet, and that will, ground any electricity out of you before you start working on things. So here's an example of a couple of slots. Notice that these are color coded. That tells you pretty much immediately that this is a dual channel system, and you have to use one set of slots before the other one. In this case, the black one's first and then the blue one's next. These little notches on the side are how you put memory in the machine. Here's the little notch in the middle. You'll notice that it's not in the center again, so that only one type of memory will fit one way. And you push memory down into the computer with a little bit of force, but not too hard, until these little clips clip around the side of the memory. Here they're showing an example. In the top one, the clips are not engaged, so we're not pushed down enough. In the bottom one, we've pushed it down and the clips have engaged that'll lock the memory in place. So problems that happen with memory, incompatible modules, if you overclock your machine and it gets too hot, the memory can get too hot as well. In fact, some of the companies now make memory that actually has heat sinks on it, so that if you're going to overclock your machine, you can cool the memory. I've also seen installations where you will put a fan above the memory or blowing directly on the memory to keep it cooler, because the faster you run electricity through it, the more heat it's going to generate. And here, mismatched RAM speeds. They mention the newer systems generally adjust to the slowest module. Memory has to all match in a machine, so if you buy two newer chips and you have two older chips in your machine, you're going to leave. If the newer ones are faster, but it's a newer motherboard, chances are the newer memory is just going to run at the older speed until you take it out and upgrade it as well. So cache problems are something that do happen, and they're a very weird error. Generally, you should check other things first, because if the cache has gone bad, you'll get some kind of weird sporadic errors. First, check the L2 cache. And the way to do that is to turn L2 off in the BIOS. If the problem works after, or the problem's gone after you've turned that off, you can assume it may be the L2. For L1, you should test that second. And unfortunately, L1 and L2 are generally not upgradable, so issues like this are going to probably require a motherboard or CPU replacement. So when your computer boots in the post test that we've talked about before, it will check the memory, and if the memory is not the same amount that was there the time before it booted, it'll pop up a message, and based on your BIOS settings, that message may stay there till you hit a key. One reason for that is, let's say that you've got a server with 16 gigs in it in 4 gig chips. If it's a new motherboard, that one may run just fine with 3 4-gig chips, so it'll boot up and detect 12 gigs. And if it doesn't alert you, then it could just go on, and your computer might run fine until it got to a high load. With a server, 12 gigs is still a lot of memory. You may run fine until you get to, say, 75 or 80% utilization, and then it may have needed that extra memory, so then maybe see when you notice that something's not right. So just like other parts inside your machine, memory needs to be kept clean. When you open your machine up, use compressed air or a data-rated vacuum to remove dust off of the memory. Install additional case fans over the memory to pull hot air out. Replace defective cooling fans, and make sure you use the suggested voltage level settings for your memory. And that is a rundown of Chapter 5. We talked about the different types of RAM and how to install it. RAM again is one of those areas that I'm going to refer you to Wikipedia to look, because as they come up with faster machines, RAM changes on a very regular basis. Something that is a little beyond the A plus, but you're going to find out in practice, is that lots of video cards now have their own memory. Instead of using the memory in the computer, they'll have their own memory on board, and that's where some of the fastest RAM can be found. The video cards were one of the first ones to use DDR5, for example. All right, thanks for watching.